Costa Rica, two words that literally translate to rich coast. But I promise you, after the next few minutes, you are going to realize that name barely scratches the surface of what this tiny Central American country actually offers. I have been to a lot of places on this planet, and there are very few destinations that have left me genuinely speechless the way Costa Rica has. And today, I am going to show you exactly why. But before we get into all of it, let me ask you something. What if I told you there is a country roughly the size of West Virginia that holds nearly 6% of the entire world's biodiversity? A place where you can stand on a volcanic crater in the morning, zip line through a cloud forest by lunch, and watch the sun melt into the Pacific Ocean by dinner? Sounds impossible, right? Well, it is not. It is just Costa Rica. And by the end of this video, you are going to understand why so many people who visit this place never truly leave, at least not in their hearts. Let us start at the very beginning, because the story of Costa Rica is one that sets it apart from almost every other country in the region. Back in 1948, something extraordinary happened. Costa Rica abolished its military. Let that sink in. An entire nation decided that instead of spending money on weapons and soldiers, it would invest in education, healthcare, and the environment. That single decision shaped everything you see and experience in Costa Rica today. It is the reason the forests are still standing. It is the reason the animals are still thriving. It is the reason the people, the Ticos as they call themselves, walk around with a philosophy that has basically become the national motto, pura vida, pure life. And it is not just a saying they put on t-shirts for tourists. It is genuinely how people approach their days. You ask someone how they are doing, the answer is pura vida. Something goes wrong, pura vida. It is gratitude, resilience, and joy all wrapped up into two simple words, and you feel it the moment you land. Now, let us talk about the geography, because this is where things get really wild. Costa Rica sits right between the Caribbean Sea and the Pacific Ocean. The country is only about 170 miles wide at its narrowest point. You could technically drive from one coast to the other in a few hours, although the roads and mountains would have something to say about that timeline. But within that compact space, you have an absolutely staggering variety of ecosystems. We are talking tropical dry forests, rainforests, cloud forests, mangrove swamps, volcanic highlands, coastal wetlands, and coral reefs. 12 distinct climate zones packed into a country that most people could not even find on a map. It is genuinely one of the most ecologically dense places on the planet. And that brings me to the volcanoes. Costa Rica has over 200 volcanic formations, and several of them are still active. The most famous is probably Arenal, and for good reason. Picture this. You are driving through the lush green countryside of the northern lowlands, and gradually this perfect cone-shaped volcano starts to reveal itself through the clouds. Arenal is the kind of volcano that looks like a child drew it. Symmetrical, towering, and absolutely magnificent. For decades, it was one of the most active volcanoes in the world, regularly sending rivers of glowing lava down its slopes. It entered a resting phase back in 2010, but the geothermal activity beneath it continues to heat natural hot springs, scattered all around its base. Imagine soaking in a warm mineral pool surrounded by tropical jungle while staring up at a volcano. That is not a fantasy. That is a Tuesday in La Fortuna. But Arenal is not the only volcanic wonder worth your attention. There is Poás volcano, which has one of the largest active craters in the world. On a clear day, you can peer down into it and see a turquoise acidic lake bubbling away inside. The colors are surreal, almost alien. Then there is Irazu, the tallest volcano in Costa Rica, where on a remarkably clear day you can supposedly see both the Caribbean and the Pacific from its summit. I say supposedly because cloud cover at that altitude is almost constant, and catching there at a view is like winning a geological lottery. But the journey up is spectacular regardless, winding through agricultural land and misty forests before emerging above the clouds into a barren, moon-like landscape. Now, let me shift gears and take you into the forests, because this is where Costa Rica truly becomes something out of a nature documentary. In fact, many nature documentaries have been filmed here. The Monteverde Cloud Forest Reserve is one of the most extraordinary places I have ever set foot in. A cloud forest is exactly what it sounds like, a forest that exists within the clouds. The moisture is constant. Every surface is draped in moss and epiphytes. Orchids bloom in impossible places, and the air itself feels alive. Walking through Monteverde is like stepping into another dimension. The sounds alone are overwhelming. Howler monkeys in the distance creating this deep, guttural roar that echoes through the canopy. Birds you have never seen before flashing colors that do not seem real. And if you are very lucky, and I mean genuinely fortunate, you might spot the resplendent quetzal. The quetzal is a bird that was sacred to the ancient Maya and Aztec civilizations. They considered it divine. And when you see one in person, you understand why. The male has these impossibly long emerald tail feathers that trail behind it like a living ribbon. Its chest is a vivid crimson red. The entire bird looks like it was designed by an artist who was told to make the most beautiful creature imaginable, and then was given no budget constraints whatsoever. Spotting a quetzal in the wild is one of those bucket list moments that genuinely changes you. You stand there in the mist, binoculars trembling in your hands, and you think, this creature is real. This is not a painting. It is right there. Speaking of wildlife, Costa Rica is absolutely teeming with it. We are talking about a country that is home to roughly 500,000 species, which represents about 5% of all estimated species on Earth, in a country that makes up only 0.03% of the planet's surface. The density of life here is almost incomprehensible. You have got 4 species of monkeys. White-faced capuchins that will stare you down with unsettling intelligence. Spider monkeys swinging through the canopy with effortless grace. Squirrel monkeys that travel in chattering groups of 100 or more. And howler monkeys whose morning calls can be heard from 3 miles away. 3 miles. That is not an exaggeration. Then there are the sloths. Oh, the sloths. Costa Rica is one of the best places in the world to see sloths in the wild, both 2-toed and 3-toed varieties. These gentle, impossibly slow creatures spend most of their lives in the treetops, moving so slowly that algae actually grows on their fur, giving them a greenish tint that serves as camouflage. Watching a sloth in the wild is a meditative experience. Everything in the modern world screams at you to go faster, do more, optimize your time. And then you look up and see this animal that has survived for millions of years by doing the exact opposite. There is a lesson in that, I think. The bird life deserves its own entire video, honestly. Costa Rica has recorded over 900 species of birds. To put that in perspective, the entire continental United States has about 100. In a country the size of one state. Toucans with their oversized candy-colored bills. Scarlet macaws painting the sky red, yellow, and blue as they fly in pairs over the Pacific coast. Hummingbirds so tiny they weigh less than a coin, hovering in place with wings beating 80 times per second. If you are a birder, Costa Rica is not just a destination, it is a pilgrimage. Now let us head to the coasts, because the beaches in Costa Rica are something else entirely. On the Pacific side, you have got this incredible diversity. In the northwest, the Guanacaste province offers golden sand beaches backed by dry tropical forest. Places like Playa Conchal, where the sand is made entirely of crushed seashells, giving it this unique pinkish-white color and texture. Further south, the Nicoya Peninsula is home to some of the best surf breaks in Central America. Santa Teresa has become a magnet for surfers and digital nomads who come for a week and end up staying for years. The vibe there is this beautiful blend of laid-back beach culture, yoga studios, fresh seafood, and sunsets that stop you in your tracks. On the Caribbean side, the atmosphere shifts completely. The town of Puerto Viejo has a distinctly Afro-Caribbean culture, with reggae music drifting from beachside bars and restaurants serving rice and beans cooked in coconut milk. The beaches here are framed by jungle that comes right down to the shore, and the water takes on those impossible turquoise hues that you think only exist in heavily edited photographs. Just south of Puerto Viejo, the Gandoca Manzanillo Wildlife Refuge protects coral reefs that are some of the best snorkeling spots in the country. And if you time your visit right between March and July, you might witness one of nature's most moving spectacles on these beaches: sea turtles coming ashore to nest. Which brings me to something that Costa Rica does better than almost anywhere else on the planet: conservation. This country has placed roughly 25% of its total land area under some form of environmental protection. National parks, biological reserves, wildlife refuges. The system is extensive and genuinely effective. Corcovado National Park, located on the remote Osa Peninsula in the southwest, has been called the most biologically intense place on Earth by National Geographic. Let me say that again. The most biologically intense place on Earth. In Corcovado, you can find all 4 species of Costa Rican monkeys, jaguars, tapirs, peccaries, giant anteaters, and an almost absurd variety of reptiles, amphibians, and insects, all within one park. Getting there is not easy. You either hike in through the jungle or take a boat along the coast. But that remoteness is precisely what has kept it so pristine. And then there is Tortuguero. This national park on the Caribbean coast is only accessible by boat or small plane, and it is one of the most important nesting sites for green sea turtles in the Western Hemisphere. The park is essentially a network of canals, rivers, and lagoons that wind through dense tropical rainforest. Traveling through Tortuguero by boat feels like gliding through the Amazon. Caimans sunning themselves on muddy banks. Jesus Christ lizards sprinting across the water surface, which, yes, is exactly as miraculous as it sounds. Toucans perched in trees right above your head. And at night, during nesting season, you can join guided walks along the beach to watch enormous green sea turtles haul themselves out of the ocean and lay their eggs in the sand. It is a raw, powerful, humbling experience. Let me take a moment to talk about something that surprises a lot of first-time visitors: the food. Costa Rican cuisine does not get the international recognition it deserves. The foundation is simple but incredibly satisfying. Gallo pinto, which is basically rice and beans cooked together with spices, is the national breakfast dish, and honestly one of the most comforting things you will ever eat in the morning. Casados are the typical lunch plate, featuring rice, beans, a salad, plantains, and your choice of meat or fish. Everything is fresh, everything is flavorful, and the tropical fruits alone are worth the flight. Imagine biting into a mango that was picked from the tree that morning, or drinking fresh coconut water straight from the shell, or trying cas, a tart citrus fruit that you have probably never heard of, blended into the most refreshing natural drink imaginable. The coffee deserves special mention too. Costa Rica is one of the premier coffee-growing regions in the world, and the country actually has a law that prohibits the cultivation of low-quality Robusta beans. Only Arabica is grown here. When you visit the Central Valley, where much of the coffee is produced, you can tour plantations that walk you through every step of the process, from the bright red cherries on the plant to the roasted beans in your cup. And the taste, when you drink truly fresh Costa Rican coffee at its source, is revelatory. There is a sweetness and complexity that you simply cannot get from a bag that has been sitting on a supermarket shelf for months. Now, I want to address something practical for anyone watching this who is actually considering a trip. One of the most remarkable things about Costa Rica is how accessible adventure is. You do not need to be an extreme athlete or a seasoned explorer to experience the wonders I have been describing. The tourism infrastructure is well developed, but manages to maintain a sense of authenticity that many heavily touristed destinations have lost. You can find everything from budget hostels to luxury eco-lodges. The road system has improved dramatically in recent years, although I would still strongly recommend a four-wheel drive vehicle if you plan to explore beyond the main highways. And the people, and I cannot stress this enough, are genuinely some of the warmest and most welcoming you will encounter anywhere in the world. For the adventure seekers, the options are almost limitless. Whitewater rafting on the Pacuare River, which consistently ranks among the top 10 rafting rivers on the planet. Zip-lining through the cloud forest canopy, an activity that was actually pioneered in Costa Rica by researchers who needed a way to study the treetops. Surfing world-class waves on both coasts. Scuba diving alongside schools of hammerhead sharks at Cocos Island, a remote UNESCO World Heritage Site that Jacques Cousteau once called the most beautiful island in the world. Rappelling down waterfalls, kayaking through mangrove channels, horseback riding to hidden hot springs. The list genuinely goes on and on. But what I find most compelling about Costa Rica is not any single attraction or activity. It is the cumulative effect of being in a place that has chosen, deliberately and consistently, to value its natural heritage. There is a concept in ecology called biophilia, the idea that humans have an innate need to connect with other living things and with nature. Most of us live in environments that suppress that need. We are surrounded by concrete, glass, and screens. And then you come to a place like Costa Rica, where the natural world is not something you have to seek out. It surrounds you. It is the soundtrack to your morning coffee. It is the view from your window. It is the reason you stop mid-sentence because a toucan just landed on a branch 10 feet away. That feeling, that reconnection, is something that stays with you long after you leave. I have talked to so many people who visited Costa Rica and describe it as a turning point. Not necessarily in any dramatic, life-changing way, although sometimes it is exactly that, but more like a recalibration, a reminder of what actually matters, a reawakening of wonder that the routines of daily life have slowly eroded. And maybe that is the real wonder of Costa Rica. Not the volcanoes as spectacular as they are, not the wildlife as extraordinary as it is, not the beaches or the forests or the food, but the way all of those things combine to remind you of something you already knew but had forgotten. That the natural world is breathtaking, that slowing down is not laziness, it is wisdom. That a life lived with gratitude and simplicity and connection to the earth is not a lesser life, it is a richer one. There is a reason Costa Rica consistently ranks as one of the happiest countries in the world. The Happy Planet Index, which measures sustainable well-being, has placed Costa Rica at or near the top multiple times. And it is not because everyone there is wealthy in the traditional sense. It is because the culture prioritizes relationships, community, nature, and that unshakable pura vida philosophy. There is a longevity hotspot in the Nicoya Peninsula, one of only 5 blue zones in the world where people regularly live past 100. Researchers have studied this community extensively, and the factors they have identified are exactly what you would expect from a place like this. Strong social bonds, an active lifestyle, a plant-heavy diet, a sense of purpose, and low chronic stress. Costa Rica is not just a beautiful place to visit, it is a model for how to live well. I also want to mention something about sustainability, because Costa Rica is genuinely leading the way on this front. The country generates the vast majority of its electricity from renewable sources, primarily hydroelectric, but also wind, geothermal, and solar. There have been stretches where Costa Rica has run entirely on renewable energy for months at a time. The government has set ambitious goals around carbon neutrality and has implemented payment programs for landowners who protect and restore forests on their property. As a result, Costa Rica actually reversed deforestation. In the 1980s, forest cover had dropped to about 21%. Today, it is back above 50%. That is an almost unheard of ecological recovery, and it did not happen by accident. It happened because an entire nation decided that its natural wealth was worth protecting. For travelers, this means that you can visit Costa Rica and feel genuinely good about it. Many lodges and tour operators have earned sustainability certifications. There is a real effort to ensure that tourism dollars benefit local communities and fund conservation, rather than just enriching outside investors. Is it perfect? No. Tourism always comes with a footprint, but Costa Rica is doing more than almost any other destination to minimize that impact while maximizing the benefit for both visitors and the places they visit.